I have these old reels that I published like for the members, which I sent you a link to, which these old reels that I have done. And there's one in there especially that's all about sort of the underwater systems that they use, the satellite systems that they use to, keep track of weather environments and any other anomalies that might happen in the ocean that might give us some clues as to natural disasters and whatnot. But if they had that type of technology back in the 60s, you can just imagine how skillfully they're able to navigate the ocean floor at this point using all types of technology. And they don't have to be anywhere near the water.
Right.
They can be sat at their home and like scan it must be like mind bending and must make their recovery efforts a lot easier now.
Well, because one of the primary objectives of Neuro was to, I think the Ivy Bells program, you tape monitoring sensors to the ocean floor, basically. I think it was Ivy Bells, but to basically be able to listen from the ocean floor, similar to we have satellites run by the NRO up in space. And of course, like you're talking about, whether it's Admiral Gallaudet, whether it's Kevin Knuth, there is so much discussion about enormous, like aircraft carrier-sized USOs. In Kevin Knuth's case, in a New Zealand destroyer, disabling electronics on the craft as it passed under. Is that the big hamburger-shaped replicating vehicle? Quite possibly.
Yeah, the MCU.
Because it's interesting that that whistleblower says that these craft are built to spec, right? And that's part of the reason why some of these crash. It's just throwaway trash. It's a crappy glider. We can get rid of it.
Well, not only the craft.
Yeah, the biologics.
Also seem to be disposable.
Yeah, and that seems to be, of course, kind of the case with the gray type being.
Or at least some of them.
At least some of them are almost like worker bees built to perform one task.
Yeah, if they wander too far from the craft, even that they fall ill and die or whatever. Yeah,
and a lot of the golden age crash retrievals, where biologics are found, whether this is Kingman, Roswell, Aztec, there's a complete absence of food systems or bathrooms or dormitories in the craft, and it's just like these biologics were put in there to control the craft, and that's about it.
Yeah, to do their tasks. And one thing that's interesting, because he kept repeating built to spec, and he emphasized it in capital letters, built to spec. I can't emphasize it enough. Listen to Matt Brown's testimony. For whatever that's worth, I don't know. I don't know the guy. I don't know how deep he ran. I don't know what ties he has, but he emphasized made to purpose, which sounds an awful lot like built to spec.
Yeah.
I think part of it's sometimes these might be, made to purpose. So, if they're only making it for a specific use case scenario, they'll design it to excel in that mission.
I guess we know that. We do that.
Absolutely.
We have bombers that look a certain way, and then we have reconnaissance vehicles that look another way. I guess.
Star Wars, they have giant cruisers, and they have the X-fighters, for different jobs. Would you be surprised to hear about cases where these things, large objects, come out of the ocean or go back into the ocean? Does that sound familiar?
I would not be surprised. I have not seen very large objects go in and out of the water, but I've definitely seen small to medium-sized UAPs either going into the water and disappearing, or going in and out, or coming out of the water.
And right after he said it, he starts talking about seeing some of these smaller vehicles being deployed from the ocean immediately after. And I go, okay, either this guy's watching my videos, he's on 4chan, or he knows something that is sort of corroborating the 4chan, guy's account.
So he talks about that, and he talks about reproduction vehicles.
That's right.
Specifically triangle seen over Indo-PACOM above foreign vessels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, Russian vessels too, and I think in there was mention of it.
So it's just a mind-boggling testimony that talks about craft being deployed from undersea, and that humans have our own reproduced vehicles. Because that's, of course, one of my huge interests, the subject of ARV, if you want to call it, alien reproduction vehicle. That term actually originated with Brad S. of the Norton Air Force Show back in 1988, who saw the flux liner, the gel and mold reproduction craft. The term has been associated with Stephen Greer throughout history, but no, it actually originated from Brad S. back in 1990, and then was talked about by senior editor of Aviation Week and Space Technology, Bill Scott, in a 1990 interview that he did with Brad S., the primary witness to that case. So that's where that term comes from. And there's a lot of interesting stories about reproduction vehicles, whether it's the flux liner, whether it's a triangle, TR-3B, XF-131 Super Sentinel, Tic Tac, what Michael Herrera saw, the 8-gon type thing, all sorts of these. That is one of the most interesting things because, you know, you and I were talking in your local area, there's been some historic triangle sightings, and that's been one of my favorite deep dives to look into too. Are triangles man-made craft? Are they NHI craft? Is there a mix between them and so forth? Because Immaculate Constellation talks about reproduction triangles.
It does talk about that, and it almost solely focuses on craft that were observed over water.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. Whether it's spheres or triangles or whatever it was, it's pretty much, you know, just over the ocean.
Another interesting thing Matt Brown has talked about since in his tweets is he talks about special purpose hangars at Pax River, Patuxent River, owned by the Amentum Corporation. So what he's implying here is that Amentum owns hangars that are now storing recovered or produced or just found or donated vehicles.
Yeah, that's such a wild... It seems like they got a lot of these things. That's because you hear about all these bases. You hear about S4. Even at S4, we're talking 1988, 1989. And, you know, that was only above ground, which we now know there's probably below ground stuff happening there too. But above ground, there were 9 hangars. That's just above ground in 1988, 89 at that one location. Conservative estimate, how many UFOs do we have?
Gosh, I don't know, because if you look at Ryan S. Wood's Magic Eyes Only, which is a pretty comprehensive account of known UFO crash retrievals, there's like 120 or more. Even if only 33% of those are real, that's still about 40 retrievals. And then before, you know, I know Jake Barber can be a little controversial, but before he went public, when people were talking about Jake before he was known publicly, they would speak about how his range would sometimes retrieve between 1 and 2 craft a year.
Wow.
And if he had been at that range for 20 years, that could be up to 40 craft just at that spot. And it seems like there are craft dispersed possibly under S4, under Area 51 Groom Lake, certainly in my opinion, at least under Edwards, under Fort Huachuca, under Patuxent River, or at Patuxent River, under China Lake.
Wright-Patterson.
Yeah, Wright-Pat under Dugway, and possibly an entire enormous network of DUMBs, connections of which we can never even comprehend.
Yeah, it makes it kind of overwhelming, don't you think?
Yeah.
Because like you're able to navigate all of this in a way that in your mind somehow makes sense of it all. For someone like me who's pretty well versed in this space, you know, I'm just kind of like a in between. I keep a foot here, keep a foot there, but it's a lot for even my brain to comprehend. How do you see people coming into this space involved with the government tackling this subject? Because if they're not someone like you, it would be so easy to fool them.
That's a great question. And to me, it's a little bit unfortunate too, the answer. Since 2017, members of the Senate, specifically Marco Rubio and Senator Gillibrand, their team of staffers, one has been named Kirk McConnell, would pull witnesses and work with Arrow to interview witnesses and such. So Rubio was briefed on this subject for 6 years. And then he still has contributed nothing. My opinion is he doesn't want to stake his political career on this. And then you have the House, who is receiving disclosures from David Grush and others in connections to witnesses and briefings to witnesses and all this, and they seem completely inept to tackle this issue as well. How does any sort of government agency or employee or official tackle this? At this point, I think it has to be on like the DNI type level, the Director of National Intelligence. I think it needs to be tackled at a very high level because it seems both Senate, we have the power, we just don't want to stake our careers on it. They don't want to get involved, and the House is just too inept. And again,
so it has to be someone from the outside. I mean, everybody else is compromised in some type of way where like they've got too much to lose.
Probably. And then, of course, in the programs, they run, at least in my opinion, from what I've heard, with minimal oversight. So sprinkled here and there might be a senator or a rep that is actively briefed and on the payroll of legacy. An example might be Mike Turner, the representative who kind of stonewalled the UAP DA that was served the district of Wright-Pat.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's so much disinformation as well. I mean, it's such a difficult mess for newcomers to track because even like Eric Burleson, who's since 2023, talking to Grush, talking to witnesses, is now kind of traveling to South America, looking at the mummies, or the sphere, sorry.
And the mummies.
And the mummies. And so and then kind of interfacing with Stephen Greer, and then kind of like, I don't know if it's true or not, but spilling conversations he says he had with Grush about the morphology of 4 different types of non-humans. Yeah. And so it's a really difficult place to track. I think what needs to happen is witnesses need to be subpoenaed, get their butts in a seat and force them to disclose.